Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou, the heavyweight super fight. Will it happen? Well, we're not quite sure. According to Jon Jones's Twitter, he's been tweeting out a lot recently about having some contract issues, apparently not getting the payday he deserves. Had a string of tweets where he essentially said, just cut me, let me go. Clearly didn't want to be part of it and felt that the UFC was acting shady in regards to him asking for more money and trying to get a better payday for this super fight. And on the other hand, you have Francis Ngannou, who just came off that tremendous performance against Stipe Miocic at UFC 260 and said in his post-fight and on Twitter, he'd fight basically anyone. I mean, whether that was Stipe again, Derek Lewis, or Jon Jones, he said, just, give me the next guy. So this is a very interesting situation because you're looking at a fight we all expected to happen, one that Dana said, yes, this is going to be the next fight, Jones versus the winner of Miocic versus Ngannou. And now it could be crumbling and falling apart again. Drake, what are your thoughts on this whole situation? And will we see Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones?
It's very hard to say, Pat. I have felt very strongly for years now since this talk just continued since it's been going on for about 8-9 years now of Jon Jones potentially going up to heavyweight since Cain Velasquez was champion, because that's when people were like, oh, let's get that super fight there. Well, that never happened, and we continued to wait. We're still waiting. Yes, he seems to be more serious about it, let go of the light heavyweight title, but I just cannot believe that the guy is actually going to fight at heavyweight until he is booked at heavyweight. So there's that, and just if we're going to be honest and talk about, okay, everyone's saying Jon Jones is scared. Dana's kind of hinting that himself with some of the comments he made at the post-fight press conference. I don't necessarily want to say that Jones is scared to go to heavyweight, and that's why he hasn't gone. But I think it is safe to say that this is a guy who very clearly has a large ego. He is very protective of his legacy, as much as I don't know if he'll specifically say that, but lately he's been going around saying he is the GOAT and, was very upset with the Khabib talk and whatnot. But you just look at, he's a guy who has perpetually had advantages against the light heavyweights throughout his career, something that would not be the case at heavyweight. He has the performance-enhancing drug, reoccurring issues. These are all signs of a guy who, likes to have the edge. Whether you want to take it for what it is, that's a whole nother topic, but he just has had that. He will not have that at heavyweight in multiple areas. So big reason why I have not believed that he's going to do this until we get some more concrete evidence of it, which would, for me, I need a booking. So then we look at, will this fight happen now? Ngannou, he says he wants it, doing all this mass tweeting, talking about pay me, cut me. I have a feeling that now from that side of things, because I already said what I just said, it's not going to happen because what he is asking for, justifiable. All fighters are underpaid. That's its own thing. Champions, they should get whatever they're demanding for the most part, I would say. But what he is likely asking for is just going to be too much for the UFC and what they'll either expect that fight to draw in or looking at past numbers. Yeah, Jones has been historically a very solid sell in terms of, the pay-per-view headliner and whatnot, but never a guy who is, has he broken 1 million maybe one time with the DC rematch?
I think that was only 800,000 or so.
Yeah, okay, so it might not even have been that, but not a guy who has broken the 1 million threshold, which not a lot of people have done that, but you look at who has done that, Ronda, Conor, Brock, for example. These are people who have made their millions because they're going over 1 million. And you know for a fact Jones is asking for that kind of money, which, as I said, fighters underpaid. That is fair. Give them the money, man. But will the UFC do that with the numbers that they have and the numbers that they would maybe expect when you look at Ngannou's side as well? As you said, I think it was before we went on air for this one, unfortunately, not as big as they probably should be for this kind of incredible individual. So looking at both sides right there, what I said, I just feel like it's turning into a even longer shot than I already felt that it would be.
Yeah, it's tough. right? Because, and I'm going to break this more. I'm going to break this down more on the Fight Business podcast this week, so make sure you check that out. But when we get into, what Jones generates statistically through economics and what he's paid, the discrepancy is insane. He's not, again, putting together the type of numbers that McGregor or Rousey put together, as you mentioned. Even at this point, I mean, his max is around where Adesanya's supposedly is. We don't have the most solid numbers around that, but I would imagine that those two are around the same level. And the interesting thing about this, for me, this whole situation is, if you remember when he first vacated the belt and said he was going to move up to heavyweight and was talking about either fighting Francis or at that point Stipe, there was a similar situation where he was like, I'm retired, I'm done, whatever, I'll sit this out. Like, I need to be paid if I'm going to move up. And then he tweets out, I had a very productive conversation with the UFC. I think we're good. It'll be fine. And we hadn't really heard anything about it since. We just knew he was bulking up and training. Now that it comes to actually get the contracts together, of course, there's going to be pay issues. And when you look at where, from just a high level, a huge part of this is where the UFC stands in Endeavor's portfolio, where we just had a piece come out that say 80% of all of Endeavor's revenue came from the UFC in 2020. That's insane. And part of the reason they're looking to buy out the rest of the company, which, again, I'll cover on the Fight Business podcast in more depth. But you're looking at this and you know how important the UFC's revenue is for Endeavor, who technically owns the company, has the majority share. Of course, they're not looking to pay anybody more than usual right now until all of that is worked out. Whether it's the Endeavor IPO, whether it's Endeavor buying the rest of the UFC, this is not the time you want to raise your costs, especially when, like, the world is not 100% back to normal. Their other brands are not full capacity and bringing in a ton of money. They are looking at it from a business standpoint of, we need all the money we can get right now. And while I'm sure this isn't, Dana White fighting for Jones to get more money and Endeavor saying, oh, no, you got to do this. At the same time, I can't imagine the UFC budging here. And with that in mind, I think it probably doesn't happen. Not because, as you mentioned, it's been a long saga with Jon Jones fighting a heavyweight. And I thought this time it was really going to happen, especially once he vacated the belt and he bulked up. But I really think it's going to come down to the dollars and cents. And I would imagine Jones holds out and either moves back down to light heavyweight or takes another fight or does something. But I can't imagine he ends up acquiescing here because he's pretty stubborn. We've seen that. And the UFC certainly isn't going to back down, especially right now. Maybe we get it in a year or two from now when all of that kind of settles, but not anytime soon.
And that's even a big risk too, because we know that as good as Francis Ngannou is, it has proven to continually get better. Heavyweight is still the land of the hot potato belt for the most part. It took so long to get a champion to defend. Was it break 3? Was it Stipe get 4-3? Like, that was the record for a long time.
I think he tied 3. Yeah, I don't even think he broke it. I think he tied it. So
there's that. Like, it's just heavyweights for you, right? You never know how long that can happen, especially if Francis wants to be active, as he doesn't generally take too much damage in his fights because he's dishing it out himself. So that's a risk, and makes it even more likely that we wouldn't see this. Jon could pull a GSP, come back and be like, all right, I'm ready now. Like, let's do it. Fighting, who knows who could be champion by then. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But Pat, how about this? Do you think that there is any chance whatsoever that the UFC does let him go?
No, I can't see. Yeah, no, he's worth too much, right? He's still, even though he's not pulling in the McGregor Rousey numbers, and his pay-per-view numbers have kind of dropped a little bit in recent events, at least from what we know, right? We don't have the exact figures, but it seems to have dropped slightly. He's still a much bigger draw than most anyone else in the company. He's somewhere in the top 5 of the biggest draws. If he goes over to Bellator where Viacom and CBS have just merged and would throw a stupid amount of money. PFL would probably spend their entire new fundraising that they just got to bring him in. I mean, at that point, and even then, I doubt he'd take PFL because that's probably less than what he gets fighting in the UFC at this point. But either way, you're looking at a situation where cutting Jones would just open the floodgates up for another smaller promotion to take some of the UFC's market share, and they can't afford that.
Yeah, that would definitely be. It sounds insane, right? To even mention, and him saying it is like, okay, man, yeah, I'm sure would be, yeah. Let's see, they won't do it. They're not gonna do that. So it would be crazy, and I'm just imagining like Jon Jones going to Bellator, and it's like, all right, they're waiting for this tournament to wrap up, and you have this guy, and just imagine him beating, like, let's say Nemkov comes through it, like, geez, UFC would be just like, damn, like, it'd be brutal. Or if he stuck at heavyweight there, then wow, that would be just a whole mess of, in terms of the community being like, oh well, he went to the weaker heavyweight division, like. That shitstorm would be insane.
Yeah. No, that
wouldn't be good for him either in terms of that legacy I was talking about. And, his ego probably wouldn't even be able to handle that.
Yeah, it'd be pretty bonkers if he actually got cut and went somewhere else. But in terms of the UFC, it seems we're both in agreement where Jones is not going to fight Ngannou. At least that's our take on it. Let us know in the comments if you think they'll get the deal done. It's possible, but right now, it certainly doesn't look to be making any headway. They're at a pretty much deadlock. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell notification so you know when we're dropping new videos. And yeah, one can only speculate how this saga ends, hopefully in a Jon Jones, Francis Ngannou super fight.